On Business Incorporated today, Rwanda locks down capital as COVID cases surge. AFDB's report says regional economic integration will boost trade in wood products. Exim Bank of Korea extends $600 million to Tunisia for digital infrastructure project. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Chimeze Obi. Well, we get the show started with the intraday market numbers. And here in Africa, all the markets we track were in negative. Here in Nigeria, the all-share index was marginally down. South Africa's JS index shed of 0.57%. In Egypt, the story is the same. The index was down 0.46%. Kenya closed Wednesday's trading positive, up 0.75%. And it's nothing different in the Middle East. Market sentiments were mostly negative at intraday. In the UAE, Abu Dhabi had shed 0.51%, while Dubai Financial Market was down 0.41%. The Qatari index lost 0.74%. Saudi Arabia's Tadawul was the only positive at intraday, up 0.81%. In Europe, stocks were lower in the morning as investors digest inflation data from the US and UK released yesterday, along with Fed Chairman Jerome Powell's comments, and look ahead to more earnings and jobs data. For more, let's hear from Conrad. Hello, Conrad. Good afternoon. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Chimmy. Good to see you too. Thanks for having me back.
You're welcome. Well, Fed Chief Jerome Powell has helped to ease market concerns about inflation. He said to members of the U.S. House of Representatives that the U.S. economy needs to improve more before the central bank will change its ultra-easy monetary policy. What's the take on this in Frankfurt?
Well, Jimmy, of course, this is positive for the markets. It doesn't really inspire investors to buy company shares, though. You know, on this relatively high level, let's not forget that the German DAX has tipped new record highs earlier this week. On this relatively high level, investors are cautious. I talked to a trader who told me it feels a little bit, maybe not like a sell-off, but some sort of profit table is on the table. And, you know, Jerome Powell and the Fed's monetary policy is not the only driver for the market. Yesterday, the European Union's Commission announced very bold, very ambitious plans for how to tackle climate change in the coming decades. Those ideas are represent huge changes for industries like the German car makers and other heavy industries. Are we supposed to see this as a threat, or shall we see the opportunities? This discussion is going on right now on the trading floors here in Europe, and this is what causes this, I would call it, very jittery, unenergetic sideways trading here today.
Yeah, seeing that zigzag movement there on the DAX. Anyway, in the meantime, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel is in Washington on what is likely to be her last trip there as Chancellor. What's important to know about this visit?
Well, next to all the nice things that Angela Merkel will have to say to the US president and the US vice president, there are at least a few points where they are likely not on the same line. One point is Nord Stream 2, this gas pipeline from Russia to Germany via the Baltic Sea. This gas pipeline is something that our neighbors, Poland and Ukraine, are heavily opposed against, because up until now, the Russian gas was transported via Poland and Ukraine, which brought money to Poland and Ukraine, and which gave those countries a bit of a lever in their position against Russia. So not only these two countries are very opposed against Nord Stream 2, also the Biden administration President Biden thinks that this makes Western Europe, that it makes Germany too dependent on Russia. This is one point there the Chancellor is going to have to talk about in Washington. Another point is the travel ban, which was imposed by the Trump administration against Western Europe, excluding the United Kingdom, but against Germany, France, the rest of Western Europe, this travel ban is still in place. Many business people here in Germany complain that they can't even go visit their subsidiaries or their affiliates in the United States. Sending a technician is possible from Germany to the US, but it involves a lot of red tape.
And on corporate news, Daimler has come out with preliminary numbers for the second quarter. Why preliminary? Are the numbers so good or so bad that the automaker had to communicate them earlier than planned?
They're so good. They're so much better than what the market had anticipated. The pre-tax profit of Daimler in the second quarter was around about 5 billion euros, 1 billion euros more than the market had anticipated. And that's particularly surprising because Daimler, like all car makers, got to feel this worldwide lack of or shortage of computer chips during the second quarter. But what Daimler did was they took the computer chips they had and built them in the cars that bring the highest profits. And that's how Daimler managed to keep the numbers up. Something else Daimler managed to do, and that was roll over price increases for raw materials and for intermediate products that it had to pay itself onto its customers. So basically, Daimler managed to increase the prices for its own products, and that also contributed to this very strong result by Germany's car maker Daimler.
All right, Farah, thank you for your time today. Just one more day to say thank God it's Friday as usual. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Looking forward to it.
And in the UK, the number of workers on company payrolls has jumped as the relaxation of lockdown rules saw firms take on more staff. Let's get details from Juliana. Hi, Juliana. Good afternoon. Well, UK job report is one of the top headlines today. What are the sound bites you are getting out of those reports?
Good afternoon, Chibuze. Yeah, we got a pretty good set of labour market data from the Office for National Statistics this morning showing that unemployment in the month of June in the United Kingdom remained unchanged at 4.8%, still historically and internationally quite low. So the Chancellor Rishi Sunak has been pretty chuffed with that. But I think the big headline really is coming from the amount of people that entered into payroll during the month of June, which is over 356,000 people. This is a huge number. I think it's the biggest number we've seen since April last year. This has been driven, well, before the pandemic, so February last year. This has been driven mostly by retail and hospitality sectors. We've been discussing this extensively on your programme, Chibuze, that at the moment it's been pretty difficult for some hospitality chiefs to get staff. A lot of this is down to Brexit. Some staff weren't happy with the opening and closing, so they've got jobs elsewhere. But there are 856,000 vacancies available in the UK at the moment. So it's good. It shows that the economy is recovering and the labour market is stabilised right about now. I think the biggest concern for observers and economists is what happens when the furlough scheme comes to an end. The furlough scheme, a pretty popular, positive scheme from the government to basically pay for people to stay at home. There are still about 2 million people relying on the furlough scheme. It has been reduced, so employers do have to contribute a lot more to those wages, but it will be completely tapered off in September. So at the moment, unemployment good at 4.8%, but there are some estimates suggesting that it could peak at 5.5% at the end of September.
And the UK's competition watchdog has imposed fines to totaling more than £260 million on pharmaceutical companies after an investigation found that they overcharged the NHS for hydrocortisone tablets for almost a decade.
Yeah, this is a massive story, very serious, and it does have serious implications. Not only that £250 million fine that's been handed down to a number of different large pharmaceutical firms in the UK. This goes back, as you said, a decade, but the story really starts last year when the now disgraced Health Secretary Matt Hancock announced that British scientists and health practitioners realised that hydrocortisone was a tablet that they could provide to serious patients, struggling with COVID-19 in hospital. It wasn't a cure. This was at the time when the whole world was at the vaccine race trying to find a vaccine. And there were some medicines that stuck out as being good to try and reduce the risk of death. And now during some of these press conferences, why Britain was so happy about hydrocortisone is because it was cheap. They found that it cost for a packet less than £1. Fast forward a few months, the Competition and Markets Authority, they started probing some of these big pharma firms that were distributing hydrocortisone, one of them being Accord Healthcare and the other being Alden Mackenzie, and they were actually charging the NHS 10,000% on what it was cost. So it was costing less than £1 to produce and manufacture, and they were charging about £80-90. It's a massive, massive story, a big scandal. And the CMA, they're pretty strong with their words, but they released a very strongly worded statement saying that these are without doubt some of the most serious abuses we have uncovered in recent years. The actions of these firms cost the NHS and therefore, of course, taxpayers, because we all pay for this in the end, hundreds of millions of pounds. Now, we do have statements also from two of the pharma firms that are caught up in this scandal, strongly refuting and denying all of these claims, lots to do probably with that heavy fine. And a spokesperson for Advanced Pharma says, we strongly disagree with the CMA's decision and we will be appealing. At all times, Advanced Pharma acted in the interest of patients. That's Advanced Pharma. Accord UK have told a newspaper here that they're very disappointed by the decision, having only inherited the product in January 2017, and we've done nothing but continuously reduce the price in the face of significant competition. So, yeah, that's a serious, serious probe and a record-breaking fine there.
And of course, we'll continue to track that story as it unfolds. Anyway, aside from the job data, there are quite a number of stories driving market sentiment today. Bring us up to speed with intraday market numbers.
Well, yeah, the FTSE is very much in the red at intraday. Again, lots of concern about the Delta variant. Yes, we are heading towards Monday, July the 19th, Freedom Day, though Freedom Day, the title of that has kind of been overshadowed, really, with the rising cases. I was mentioning yesterday that cases here in the UK, positive cases, have increased 15 times in the past month. Last week alone, over 500,000 people in the UK got a ping from the NHS app telling them that they had to self-isolate. So it does look like it's spiralling out of control here. On the flip side, we did have some comments, actually, from one of the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee members. I'm not sure if this was on the record or off the record, but he did suggest that perhaps the Bank of England may start tapering down quantitative easing, which currently stands at about £845 billion due to those high inflation figures that we received yesterday of 2.5%. But that wasn't enough to bring up the FTSE. The FTSE all-share at intraday is down 0.72%. The FTSE 100 is down by 0.70%, and the domestic market, the FTSE 250, that's down 0.71%. In currencies, the British pound is up on the US dollar by 0.06%, up on the euro by 0.23%, and up on the Japanese yen by 0.09%. Chimmy.
All right, Juliana, thank you for those updates. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
And shares in Asia Pacific were mixed in Thursday trading as China reported its second quarter gross domestic product grew. Mainland Chinese stocks were mixed in the morning. the Shanghai Composite rose 0.26%, while the Shenzhen component fell 0.26%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index gained 1.33%. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 slipped 0.93%, while the Topix Index shed 0.86%. Meanwhile, the S&P ASX 200 in Australia slipped 0.16%. Australia's seasonally adjusted unemployment rate fell to 4.9% in June. And in the US stock futures were mixed in early morning trading as investors are readied for more corporate earnings and labor market data. Dow futures fell, same with S&P 500 futures, which were below the flat line, while Nasdaq 100 futures were mildly higher. We take a break now. When we come back, we talk commodities. To stay with us. And commodities market, we're looking at ammonia. Ammonia is otherwise known as a hydrogen nitride and is a very critical input for fertilizer and agricultural productivity. Ammonia has come into the spotlight recently in global and domestic markets due to significant hikes in prices by 100% from $325 per ton in January to $650 currently. Why is this? Lawrence Mercy, research analyst with Financial Derivatives Company, will tell us. Hello, Lawrence. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
So the hike in price of ammonia is evident in the global market and in individual markets like the US and China. What is responsible for this astronomical hike, and do you think that it is sustainable?
This hike in prices is largely attributable to supply constraints existing in the markets, which is also accompanied by increasing demand, especially across crop-growing countries and environments mainly. Supply constraints are largely caused by, one, the Arctic blast, which took place in February. This caused rerouting of natural gas, and as a result, nitrogen and consequently ammonia factories were also shut down for almost about 2 weeks. This actually caused prices to skyrocket for a period of time. Also is an increase in commodities prices across board, which has caused farmers, especially in the US, to make use of more inputs and use out of their storage as well. And as a result of this, with increasing demand, they are not able to meet up with their current capacity and supply. And all these factors account for this astronomical hike in prices. Now, is this sustainable? At current trends, we expect that the high prices are going to continue in the short term. But in the longer term, we expect that supply will catch up, but this would be sometime in mid-2020.
Now, ammonia is used mainly in fertilizer production, house cleaning chemicals, refrigerators, and air conditioning gas. However, research states that about 80% of all ammonia produced goes into fertilizer production. What do you think an increased fertilizer intake of ammonia would mean for the agricultural sector in Nigeria?
Currently, according to the NBS report, agriculture contributes about 22 to 23% of GDP, and this is taking into consideration the fact that Nigeria doesn't use the most modern means of agricultural production. Research also shows that soil fertility conservation techniques being used are things mulching, shifting cultivation, crop rotation, and bush fallowing. These are all, would I say, archaic techniques in soil fertility. But taking into account all of this, the fact that agriculture still provides greater than 20% of overall GDP, this is quite impressive. So the use of fertilizers will eliminate all these obsolete techniques and will also increase crop yield and productivity in the short term and in the long term. However, it's essential to note that there are some drawbacks from increased fertilizer usage, such as algae formation in seeds, which cause death of biological plants. But in summary, increased fertilizer usage is expected to cause an increase and a rapid growth in the agricultural sector as it eliminates obsolete techniques in soil fertility conservation.
Now, the NSIA and OCP signed an MOU earlier this year to facilitate the furtherance of the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative. Now, this agreement is set to see the construction of a $1.5 billion ammonia fertilizer factory in Akwa Ibom State. What is the possible impact of this investment, and how would it have a multiplier effect on the economy?
Well, the NSI-OCP MOU is expected to create a factory that will have a capacity of about 1.5 million tons per year. However, 70% of this is to be exported to Morocco. The balance would then be used to produce diammonium phosphate fertilizers and NPK fertilizers. The multiplier effect that this will have would be, one, it will be an increase in jobs, especially in the construction industry. Then it also involve an increase in jobs, especially in the administrative process of this factory, and also for technical engineers and agricultural specialists. It also have a multiplier effect in services industry, such as banking, as there will be more funds flowing in, and also insurance against such a capital investment. This investment is expected to increase GDP and also expected to also bring along other value-added industries along with it in short term and in the long term.
All right, thank you very much for your time, Lawrence. We do appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
And Rwanda will put the capital, Kigali, and 8 other districts across the country under lockdown from Saturday to rein in surging coronavirus cases and deaths. The restrictions will last until July 26. Both public and private offices, except for those providing key services, have been ordered to close. Other measures due to come into force include a ban on outdoor sport and recreational activities, while schools will be closed and the number of people attending funerals is capped at 15. International arrivals and tourism will, however, continue. A dusk to dawn curfew introduced in June across the country remains in force. Rwanda has up until now avoided the worst of the pandemic by enforcing some of the strictest containment measures on the continent and implementing a rigorous regime of testing and contact tracing. And a new report by the African Natural Resources Center of the African Development Bank indicates that regional economic integration can boost trade in wood products among African countries other than sending raw wood mainly to China. The report, titled Intra-African Trade in Wood Products, Case Studies from Benin, Cameroon, Ghana, and the Republic of Congo, explores the role that forest value chains can play in advancing Africa's development objectives. Overall, intra-African trade is much lower than trade within other regions at 10 to 13%. By comparison, intra-regional trade accounts for 72% in Europe and 52% in Asia. The report identifies 6 factors that will be critical in boosting the intra-African wood trade as continental destination of products, African destination of products, product type, private sector business interest, tree species demand, and government policy and regulation. And the Export-Import Bank of Korea has agreed to extend a $600 million loan to Tunisia to support the North African country's digital infrastructure development projects. Tunisia plans to use the fund to digitize some 4.5 million maps and land-related documents to build a database and develop a comprehensive and information management system there. The loan will be provided under the Economic Development Cooperation Fund, South Korea's lower interest loan scheme aimed at supporting economic growth in emerging countries and promoting bilateral economic exchanges. It marks the first EDCF loan agreement that South Korea has linked with a North African country. And Africa's largest bank by assets, Standard Bank, is to take full control of insurer Liberty Holdings, with current shareholders to receive cash and shares worth around 8.6 billion rand in total. Standard Bank already owns 54% of the insurer and wants to acquire the remaining 96 million shares, excluding those of one other shareholder, in a deal that would see Liberty delisted from the Johannesburg bourse and subsumed into the lender. The lender said the move was a natural progression in the company's relationships And in line with its strategy of offering a wider set of financial services to its customers across the continent, Standard Bank will offer 0.5 of Standard Bank shares and a cash payment of 14.40 Rand for each Liberty share, while Liberty will also pay shareholders 11.10 Rand. The deal is, however, subject to approval by investors and regulators. And that's a wrap on the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago.